Before I start this video, I need to remind you that this video may have some censorship. After all, today's video is one where certain adult things happen. The hero of this story is Michio Kaga, and the story begins with him in a stable. He's completely disoriented and is wondering how he got there. He remembers trying to play a game online, but has no idea what happened next. Suddenly, a horse frightens him, and when he turns to look at it, some information about the animal appears next to it. He concludes that this must be the skill of evaluation, which allows him to obtain information about anything he sees. So, to test it out, he uses his ability on himself and checks his own stats, and this confirms his suspicion that he really is inside a game. He realizes that his appearance in the game is identical to that in real life, an amazing piece of technology, because even the sweatshirt he's wearing in the game is identical to his real-life one. He realizes he's barefoot, so he grabs a pair of shoes from nearby. He then uses his rating on himself and discovers that after stealing the shoes, he has become a level 1 thief. He remembers having activated the extra equipment option before starting the game, and using his rating, he manages to locate his equipment, which in this case is a sword called Durandal. It comes with a ring that increases his attack power and improves his communication skill. He realizes that he is trapped in this virtual reality, so the best thing he can do now is explore this unknown world. As soon as he leaves the house, he hides from some villagers who appear alarmed about something. He uses his appraisal skill on the approaching crowd and realizes that they are all bandits. He spots a high-level bandit among them, probably the leader, who is wearing a thief's bandana. And while the bandits are attacking the villagers, Michio sees an opportunity to strike unnoticed. He makes a quick decision and attacks the leader of the bandits, quickly beheading him, but he ends up being surprised by the graphic violence of this game. Another bandit attacks him, but with a quick move, Michio disarms him and kills him, and comments that having trained in kendo is proving useful in this game. The remaining bandits try to escape, but Michio goes after them and eliminates them without any mercy. After all, he's in a game, and he needs experience points. After finishing off the bandits, he uses the evaluation on himself, and confirms that he has risen to level 2 thanks to his killing spree. Now an older man approaches him and thanks him for saving the village. The man introduces himself as Samara, the village chief. In addition, the man invites him to his house so that he can express his gratitude in an appropriate way, and Michio accepts. Then, in the village storehouse, Samara shows him the loot from the battle and asks Michio to take what he wants. He explains that the villagers managed to defeat only 2 bandits, so they only got their belonging, while the rest will be Michio's. Then, using appraisal, Michio notices only common bandit items, and Samara thanks him for the information. He also offers Michio a room to stay in. Now, alone in his room, Michio tries to figure out how to get out of the game. He tries various commands to log out, but doesn't succeed in any of them, and this begins to worry him. He remembers a warning message that appeared when he first entered the game, saying that he couldn't come back once he'd started, and apparently it wasn't a joke. He is then forced to face reality, because even though this is a game, if he can't get out, that will be his reality now. And if this is his reality, he hasn't just defeated game characters. He's killed real people, and he'll probably face similar situations in the future. He realizes that he should be happy to have gained experience so early. After all, if this is his new life, he will probably have to deal with bandits again. He then tells himself that this world is real, and that he must survive in it. Out of the blue, Samara returns and informs him that he has found the culprit for the bandana swap, and that the person is someone from the village. Samara then gives him back the real bandana, and Michio uses his judgment and realizes that this is a bandit's bandana. The Samara now wants to discuss the punishment for the culprit, and Michio replies that he is just an outsider in this village, and that he doesn't intend to interfere with the rules of this village. Hearing this, the Samara stands in front of the thief and begins to recite the incantation. He ends up with an open intelligence card, summoning something out of thin air. He then explains to Michio that he registered the thief as a slave on the intelligence card, and on examining the card closely, Michio realizes that it contains detailed information about each person. The Samara explains that in his village, thieves are sold as slaves, and half the price is given to the victim as compensation, and the other half goes to the thief's family, who have lost a worker. Samara then hands Michio the bandit's intelligence card, and tells him that he has the right to claim any reward offered by them. He also informs him that there is an adventurer's guild in the city city, where he can collect the reward money. Samara offers to take Michio to Vale, which happens to be the largest city in the region, and Michio accepts this help. When they arrive in the city, they go straight to the Knights Guild, where Michio hands over the intelligence cards. Then the employee explains that there is a reward for 2 of the bandits. She first checks Michio's intelligence card, then gives him the reward money, confirming that everything is in order. After that, Samara takes Michio to the slave dealer's mansion, and there the slave dealer introduces himself as Alan. And as they sit down to talk, Alan explains that he has been receiving a lot of visitors lately due to the discovery of a labyrinth near the city 2 days earlier. Samara presents Alan with a document explaining the situation of the slave he wants to sell, and Alan is surprised to learn that Michio single-handedly defeated all those bandits. Michio then acts humbly, saying that the bandits were weak and that he was far superior, as he is the hero of this story, and this arouses a certain interest in Alan. But he focuses on what's most important. He says that the slave is in excellent condition and offers him 30,000 coins from this world. Then, when the sale is complete, Samara says goodbye to Michio after giving him half of the payment. Now Michio reflects on the fact that he is on his own and that he has no one to confide in. At this point, Alan asks if they can talk in private, and Michio agrees. He notices that the room Alan is taking him to is much more luxurious than the previous one, which makes him wonder what's going on. Alan begins by asking Michio if he is an adventurer, and when he confirms, Alan asks if he is interested in buying a slave, a man or a woman, and this sparks Michio's imagination, and he can't help fantasizing about having a companion in this world who is totally faithful to him. He tries to keep these thoughts under control, but he's always been the wrong boy. To make matters worse, out of the blue a young woman comes and serves him some tea, and Michio can't help but stare at the girl and her fluid movements, which don't look exaggerated like one from a game, but are actually quite realistic. Something incredible to behold. Michio thinks to himself that he has never seen such a beautiful woman with such striking features. Alan, noticing Michio's gaze, asks him if he likes this girl. He then explains that she is the most recommended slave in the house, called Roxane, and on hearing this, Michio asks if slaves usually betray their masters, and Alan assures him that they don't, unless they are specifically freed by inheritance or will. He also says that slaves who lose their masters take their own lives, and runaway slaves are relegated to the status of bandits, which is quite bad, as there is no penalty for killing bandits, and their possessions can be easily taken. So even if a slave steals a lot of money from their masters and escapes, they are unlikely to be able to live a comfortable life. Alan adds that Roxane is from the wolf tribe, so she's a warrior beast, which makes her very useful in the labyrinths. And as if that weren't enough, she's young and her body has never been touched by a man, so there's no risk of disease. Alan comments that she is willing to sleep with her master. Alan, like a good salesman, believes that she could be very useful to Michio. Michio thinks about buying her, imagining how good his life would be if he had her company. For a few seconds he pretends not to be interested, but after half a second of acting he asks her price, and Alan tells him that she costs 600,000 coins of this world. But as Michio is a hero who has defeated several bandits, he will give him a special discount. If Michio pays cash, he can sell her for 420,000 coins of this world, obviously including even the clothes she's wearing. Unfortunately for Michio, he doesn't have any money and decides to leave, but before he can leave completely, Alan tells him that he can keep it for him for 5 days and that he should try to get the money by then. Alan then tells Roxane that Michio is interested in buying it, and she thanks Michio, making him even more determined to get the money. Now we see that he has no idea how to get the money, but he is very determined to make her his. Later, Michio stays in an inn and calculates his saving. He has a total of 33 gold coins, which is equivalent to 330,000 coins from this world. However, he still needs 70,000 coins from this world to buy Roxane. He remembers an earlier conversation with Alan and comes to the conclusion that if Alan is telling the truth, there are 2 ways to make money quickly. Alan had mentioned that a labyrinth was discovered in the western forest recently, and as adventurers can sell the items they obtain by defeating the monsters. This is a reliable source of income for those who trust in their abilities. But earning a lot of money in a short time is complicated, so Michio comes to the conclusion that becoming a bounty hunter might be the best option. Alan had said that it could make a lot of money, but he didn't recommend it, because if Michio started making money very suddenly, he could end up attracting unwanted attention. Also, although it's more efficient than exploring a maze, there aren't many people with high enough rewards to justify the risk. Michio knows he still has 5 days to buy Roxane, so he'll try the safest method first. Fortunately, during his fight against the bandits, he realized that his sword is incredible, and because it's so good, someone might try to steal it, and if that happens, it will be the end of him. After all, he's invested 63 extra points in it. So, to avoid trouble, he opens his character settings and stores Durandal in his inventory, making it disappear from his hand. Afterwards, Michio heads to the market in search of a common weapon to carry with him, and as he enters a gun store, he examines some scimitars on display and notices that one of them has a skill slot. He asks the seller if all the scimitars are the same price, and the seller confirms that they are, so he takes the opportunity to buy that particular scimitar, as it is certainly superior. After acquiring some protective equipment, he heads into the labyrinth. On the way, he sees some adventurers coming out of a portal. He thinks it must be teleportation magic, and thanks to them, he finds the entrance to the labyrinth. Before entering, he prepares himself fully and goes through the portal, finally entering the dungeon. Now, when he checks his classes, he realizes that he has more options than before. The new class available is the Explorer. At level 1, he remembers that when he stole a pair of shoes earlier, he got the Thief class, and now, on entering the labyrinth, he has gained the Explorer class. He also notices the Hero class, which offers great stat. He sets Hero as his secondary class, leaving Explorer as his third, and when he checks his Explorer skills, he finds a skill called Dungeoneering, and when he activates it, it creates a portal next to him. Mithy says he wants to go back to the previous room, and when he goes through the portal, he emerges in the same place. However, when he tries to use the portal to leave the labyrinth, it doesn't work. Then he realizes that the ability is only effective inside the dungeon, which means that the magic he saw outside must be different. What's more, he discovers that the ability is limited to certain locations within the labyrinth. Then, with the Durandal in hand, he senses an enemy approaching. He quickly uses a detection skill and discovers that his enemy is a level 1 creature. After defeating it, he realizes that the level 1 tree has dropped a branch, and not knowing exactly what it's for, he decides to keep it. Then another enemy approaches, and this time Mithy uses the Crushing Hero skill, which he had seen earlier in his stat. When he activates it, he notices that the tree is moving more slowly, or perhaps he has become faster. However, before he can attack, he starts to feel very depressed, but he manages to concentrate and eliminate the monster. And when he tests the skill again, the same thing happens. Soon, he realizes that the problem lies in his MP, because in this world, the lower his magic is, the more depressed and willing to die he becomes. It's as if he's lost all motivation. Fortunately, he manages to recover quickly, because Durandal absorbs MP, and that's an insane advantage for him. After hunting several monsters, he goes to the guild to collect the reward, and activates the ability to increase the value of the sale by 30%. He hands the receptionist a pile of twigs and receives 273 coins from that world. Back at the inn, he thinks about his ability to increase his earnings by 30%. He realizes that if he didn't have this skill, he would only have received 10 coins per branch. So if he defeated 10 monsters an hour, he would only earn 100 coins, and in 10 hours of non-stop fighting, he would earn 1,000 coins. It's at this point that he realizes that raising enough money to buy Roxane will be more difficult than he imagined, so the next morning he leaves very early, so early that he can barely see where he's going. However, he remembers that he has an ability called Transfer, which in this case is an enhanced form of teleportation that he has recently acquired. However, as soon as he enters the labyrinth, he starts to feel depressed because his MP has gone completely negative, so he goes as fast as he can to defeat more monsters and recover. As as he struggles, he realizes that his stamina is not infinite, and he ends up sitting down due to exhaustion. He realizes that he has leveled up, but at this rate, he won't be able to raise the money he needs to get Roxanne. Fortunately, he discovers a secret passage, and on noticing something shiny, he quickly moves forward into a hidden room. But he realizes that it's just a broken sword. Just then, the doorway he entered closes, and he hears several monsters appearing. He realizes that it's not a secret treasure chest, but a nest of monsters. Now in trouble, he tries to use his transfer to escape, but it turns out that he can't use this skill in the middle of a fight. The monsters advance against him, and he begins to defend himself. During the fight, he has the idea of maintaining his stamina with Durandal's HP absorption. He then uses the crushing hero skill, eliminating several enemies at once. However, due to the reduction in MP, he ends up trapped against the wall. He is forced to recognize that the hero crusher skill consumes a lot of MP, so defeating just one or two enemies won't be enough to recover. However, if he saves his MP, he'll end up dying. In the end, after much effort, he manages to defeat all the monsters, and after collecting all the loot, he leaves completely exhausted. On the way, he notices a crowd in the distance, and as he gets closer, he asks what has happened. Then a man tells him that the body of a bandit has been found, probably one of those who lived in the city's slum. The man continues the gossip, saying that a group of bandits have left the city, and that rumors are circulating that perhaps they are looking for another hiding place, because the knights are becoming increasingly strict with them. However, there is also a rumor that they may have lost to another rival group. Midio asks how they know the body was that of a bandit. Then they point out that the part of his left arm was cut off because intelligence cards don't appear as soon as a person dies, so people usually take the arm along with the card inside, and this gives Midio an idea. He reflects on himself and comes to the conclusion that he's already crossing out his life anyway, so he must choose the method that will bring him closer to Roxanne. So he makes the decision to go hunting for bandits. Back on pause, Midio recognizes that if he wants a lot of money, his only option is to hunt bandits. The problem is how he's going to do it. He wonders if he can do it with his current skills, and despite his doubts, he decides to go ahead with the plan and opens his class setting. He realizes that he now has more classes, such as warrior, swordsman, and merchant. When he checks the warrior class, he sees that it has better effects than the villager, which in this case is the main class he is using. What's more, the warrior class also has a useful ability. It adjusts its classes according to what he needs to do against the bandit. The next day, he goes to the market and hears some villagers talking about the bandit. He discovers that the bandits usually stay in the northern slums, so he uses his teleport to get to that area, and notices that the atmosphere has changed a lot. But as he finds nothing, he decides to investigate during the night. Back in the pause, he reflects to himself that he has already been able to use his teleportation power frequently, and now he is no longer getting depressed. He comes to the conclusion that this is because he has leveled up in that monster trap. When he goes out at night, the owner of the place where he is staying offers him a lamp. He moves on and soon reaches the red light district, and he is quickly tempted by the beautiful women on display, but he ignores them, reminding himself that none of them are better than Roxanne. A little later, he uses the appraisal on a person who catches his eye, and so he discovers that it's a bandit. He decides to follow him and ends up finding the hideout of a group of bandits. He uses his teleportation ability to sneak up on them, getting close enough to overhear their conversation. They're talking about the leader of the bandits Midio defeated in that village, and so he continues to gather information in search of an easy target to make money from. Now, with 2 days left to buy Roxanne, Midio has a better understanding of how the city works at night. Basically, at night it's the crooks and corrupt people who rule. The thugs usually walk the streets, sometimes guarding intersections, but most of the time they get drunk in bars. They also have groups, and each one dominates a certain type of territory, and a law among all of them is to avoid the territory of other gang, and that guy who's in the same place as before is one of them, and that's the area he controls. Midio comes to the conclusion that if he hunts down just this man and his group, the other gangs probably won't care, so he starts to come up with a plan to make a good amount of money. When he returns to the inn, the owner tells him he's late and invites him to dinner. Midio asks him about the murders that have been taking place, and the innkeeper tells him that it's a power struggle between the Favelas, and that the stories circulating are all lies. He says that recently the leader of one of the groups changed, and they expelled the faction that supported the leader who lost the succession. succession. The man killed the other day was from the faction that won and stayed in town, but the other groups want his head. Midio assumes that they want to annihilate them and pretend that it was the work of those they expel. After that, Midio returns to his room and he continues to think about how he's going to make some easy money. After that, he starts fantasizing about all the things he's going to do with Roxane when he buys her. Then, when he finally comes back to reality, he prepares to go out that very night, taking with him the bandana of the thief he killed. When he arrives at the bandit's hideout, he shows the bandana to the bandit at the entrance, who easily recognizes it. He then tells the bandit that if he gives him information, he will give him the bandana in exchange for a gold coin. After that, the bandit asks what he wants to know, and Midio says he wants to know more about Hugo. With that, the bandit lets him in, saying that their boss knew Hugo, but the bandit says that Midio will have to meet him later, as he was asleep. Once inside, the bandit asks Midio to show him the thief's bandana again, as he wants to make sure it's the real one. Just as Midio is about to take it out of his pocket, the bandit tries to snatch it from him, but he can't because of Midio's reflexes. However, the bandit becomes confident when he sees that Midio isn't carrying a weapon, but Midio throws the bandana towards a lamp, distracting the bandit, who doesn't want it to burn. He quickly takes advantage of this distraction to instantly draw the Duranda from his inventory and quickly stabs the bandit in the back, then cuts off his hand. It turns out that this was one of his plans, and he didn't actually throw the bandana at the lamp, he just threw it next to it to make it look like it was going to burn. After that, Midio sneaks into the room where the others are. He uses a skill to check that all the bandits are there and eliminates them one by one, quickly decapitating them with the sharp end of the Duranda. However, one of his victims makes a noise, so he quickly finishes off the next one that gets up. The sound alerts the last one alive, but Midio goes into another room with his teleportation ability, taking the bandit completely by surprise. After cutting off his hands to get the cards, he decides he can't take any more risks, so he uses his transfer ability to go to the labyrinth and rest for a while. There he feels very depressed, probably because his MP has dropped a lot after he used his transfer several times. But later he leaves the labyrinth, believing that he has already recovered his MP. Yes, his MP has recovered, but he's still sad. So he remembers the people he killed. It's at that moment that he remembers that in this world killing bad guys is supposed to be no big deal, but in the world he came from, he would be a very bad person. Unfortunately, he had no other choice. After all, getting Roxane is much more important. Later, he arrives at the inn and wonders how he's going to get the rewards for these intelligence cards, since he's just recently received another reward for killing bandits as well. If he keeps collecting rewards like this one after the other, the knights might get suspicious. Then, the next day, he approaches the Knights Guild and sees one of the knights who helped him the first time he was there. He takes the opportunity to talk to the knight, explaining that last night, some strange guys had a fight with him, and they seem to be bandits, and the knight asks to see Mithio's intelligence card, so he can make sure everything is in order. When the man has finished checking, he tells Mithio that the men were indeed bandits, and that there were rewards for 2 of them. He then takes the reward money, and Mithio quickly walks away to count the money. Realizing that he has finally reached the amount needed to buy Roxane, he runs to see Alan, who after counting the money, tells Mithio that he has all the money, and that he will bring Roxane to him immediately. After a while, Alan arrives with Roxane, and the girl tells Mithio that she needs to apologize for something. She explains that she waited faithfully and trusted him to come for her, but there was a day when she doubted him, thinking he wouldn't come. He obviously tells her not to worry, because everything is fine now, and Roxane ends up staying by his side. However, Alan tells him that they still need to make a contract, so he asks them both to check their intelligence card. That said, he begins to recite a spell. When he's finished, Mithio checks Roxane's intelligence card and sees that his name is listed as her owner, so the contract is complete. What's more, his own intelligence card now lists Roxane as his slave. And finally, Alan thanks him for buying one of his slaves, and says that as of today, he is Roxane's owner. Upon hearing this, Mithio celebrates internally, as she is finally his. Later, he returns to the inn with Roxane, and the owner asks if they want a double room, and Mithio agrees, saying that maybe he'll make a bit of noise. His new room is much more spacious, and he notices that Roxane is a little scared. Fortunately, Mithio knows she has nothing to worry about, as his toy is very small and can't even hurt her. The 2 of them sit down, and Mithio Mithio comments by saying that they only have one bed, but Roxanne says that she only has one bed because he asked for it to be that way, and obviously that's the reason she's nervous. He then sees Roxanne's ears and can't resist the temptation to stroke them, but for now he wants to contain his thoughts in pure. He strikes up a conversation with Roxanne, telling her that he has come from a faraway place, so he doesn't know the local customs very well. He asks her to explain what he doesn't know, and also tells her that she will be accompanying him into the labyrinth, so she needs to keep these two things in mind, and Roxanne agrees, saying that she can handle it. Mithio notices that she's not wearing shoes, and then he finds out that she's been like this ever since he bought her. So he decides to give her his shoes, even though both pairs are too big for her. However, Roxanne tells him not to worry, as the equipment is made to adapt to the wearer, and that everyone knows this, so as this is the first item he gives her, she plans to take very good care of them, and after she turns to leave, Mithio suddenly hugs her from behind. He believes it's normal for Roxanne to be tense, but she doesn't seem to be resisting, which means she agrees with what he plans to do from now on. He then tells her that he won't let her leave, and she agrees without complaint. Afterwards, as they head towards the market, Mithio tells her that she can use one of his swords, and he asks her what she intends to do to defend herself. Roxanne says she could use a shield, but when it comes to choosing one, she ends up being very cautious. Mithio takes the opportunity to point out which ones are the best, all thanks to his ability to judge. So after buying her shield and the rest of her equipment, they go to buy a cloak. He tells Roxanne that she can choose whatever she wants, as long as she fondles him at night. After a while, she asks him which of the two outfits would be best, and after thinking for a moment, Mithio points out the best features of each, and finally recommends one of the two. Roxanne does the same, and says she likes that outfit too. He then tells her that if she needs anything, she can ask for it, adding that today is a special day, and they should celebrate, especially at night. On hearing this, Roxanne rushes over and replies that she needs underwear, and to be honest, she says she only has the clothes she's wearing, so Mithio decides to buy her 2 more sets of clothes. As soon as they have finished shopping, Mithio returns to the inn with Roxanne and asks her to sit down. However, he notices that she sits on the floor in front of him, and after a lot of insisting, he makes her sit next to him. He tells her not to worry, revealing that she is also going to sleep in his bed. Roxanne says that she doesn't mind sleeping on the floor, and that he doesn't have to be so generous, but he wants her to sleep in his bed, so he obviously has an ulterior motive. Mithio then asks Roxanne if it's normal for slaves to sleep on the floor, and she says that's what she's heard from other slaves. Upon hearing this, Mithio reaffirms that the two of them slept together in bed. Suddenly, Roxanne gets up and says that as it's still light, she's going to clean her equipment. She sits down at the table, picks up the sword that Mithio has chosen for her, and begins to examine it. Roxanne comments that the sword isn't bad, but it isn't great either, and since their lives depend on this equipment, they need to keep it in good condition. She also mentions that since Mithio has bought her new underwear, she would like to use her old clothes to clean it. Then, while she's cleaning the equipment, she tells him that he can go to dinner now, but Mithio asks her to have dinner with him, as he wants the two of them to eat together. Roxanne accepts his request, gets up and starts to take off her clothes, and Mithio is alarmed to realize that the old clothes she has just mentioned are the ones she is wearing. When Roxanne turns to look at him, Mithio quickly tells her to pretend he isn't there, and turns away to give her privacy. Even though he tries to resist, Mithio can't help but want to take a peek, and Roxanne obviously notices. When she finishes changing, he notices that she's done it very quickly, but he knows that the best is yet to come. Then, finally, night comes, and the innkeeper brings hot water for them both. At first, Mithio asks Roxanne to wash his back. He also decides not to be nervous about being in his underwear in front of her, and just lets her take care of his body. He tells Roxanne that he'd like to take a hot bath, and asks her if she knows about bathtubs. Roxanne replies that she does, but explains that preparing so much hot water is challenging, so unless he's rich, it's unlikely they'll be able to afford one. After his bath, the long-awaited night finally arrives, and Mithio gets Roxanne's permission so that they can become one. The next morning, Mithio is still surprised that the day has actually come, and as soon as he wakes up, Roxanne turns to him and kisses him intensely. He remembers that she asked him to do this before, so he obeys her words. He reacts to the kiss in a certain way, but says anyway that he'll let all the action stop at night. He then asks Roxanne if it's okay for her to go with him into the labyrinth, and she agrees. Then, while they're gearing up, Mythio asks how he can add skills to his equipment. Roxanne then explains that this is done with skill crystals, which are formed by accumulating the skills possessed by monsters. These crystals are rare, but if Mythio finds one in the labyrinth and fuses it with his equipment, he can add skills to it, although this still depends on the talent of the blacksmith who will perform the fusion. Mythio thinks about acquiring this class and asks how he can become a blacksmith. Roxanne replies that this is a job exclusively for dwarves, so he realizes that his best option is to ask a dwarf to create this type of equipment for him. However, on hearing this, Roxanne advises him not to do this because dwarves don't usually accept direct requests, and even if they do, he has no guarantee of a reliable job. Besides, some dwarves pretend to fail the fusion and then sell a piece of equipment with skills to make money. They tell the customer that the fusion has failed and then profit from the equipment. In our world, this happens when you go to repair a vehicle. Initially, it's just a brake problem, but when the budget comes out, it's more worthwhile to burn the vehicle and buy a new one. Later, Mythio takes Roxanne to an alley and uses his transfer magic to get directly to the labyrinth, and this leaves Roxanne completely confused. She thought that the transfer ability could only be used inside the labyrinth, but Mythio clarifies that it uses a different kind of magic and that it can be used outside the labyrinth. And although Roxanne has never heard of it, Mythio says that there are other people who can use it, but they just keep it a secret, so he asks Roxanne to do the same. Out of nowhere, Roxanne starts sniffing the air. She then tells Mythio that she has found some monsters, and that the nearest one is on the right, as she can smell them. She explains that she has one of the best senses of smell of her kind, so generating prey is her specialty. She also asks if he could lend her a magic crystal, and Mythio asks why she wants him to lend her one. She then says that monsters are made of magic, and as they are defeated, that magic accumulates and forms a magic crystal. These crystals serve as a source of energy for the guild's temples, and Roxanne, without a crystal, even if she kills monsters, she won't be able to accumulate their magic. Mythio is shocked to realize that he has been wasting this magic all along. He then asks if these crystals are bought for a good price, and Roxanne explains that of all the items obtained in the labyrinth, the magic crystal is the most valuable. However, it accumulates magic very slowly, and it's rare to be able to sell one, so Mythio hasn't lost that much money. She also says that he can find these magic crystals by collecting them in the labyrinth or by buying one from the guild. When they finally spot the first monster, Roxanne stands guard, but Mythio easily defeats it with a durandal. He comments to her that her sword is incredible and asks her to keep it a secret. As they walk, he notices that her tail is wagging a lot, so he deduces that she is very excited. At the end of the day, they return to the hostel with several branches. Roxanne then reveals that in the group she was in before, she was a complete novice, so people never asked her opinion. During battles, she would just watch from afar or be told to attack from behind, but fighting alongside Mythio is different, and she has enjoyed it a lot. After hearing this, he asks permission to stroke her ears, which makes her feel pleased with his gentle manner. While doing this, he assures her that he will never leave her, and this makes her very happy. Soon after, he says that he wants to increase his fighting power by bringing new members into the group. Roxanne accepts this calmly, and Mythio comes to the conclusion that she has accepted him forming his own harem. A while after that, we see that he has bought the magic crystals, and Roxanne explains that the color of the crystals changes depending on the amount of magic accumulated. After defeating 10 monsters, the crystal turns red, and with 100 monsters, it turns purple, and so on. It is said that after defeating 1 million monsters, the crystal turns white. However, it is common to sell them after defeating 10,000 monsters, when the crystal is green. And finally, a yellow crystal means that it has absorbed the energy of 100,000 monsters. After that, they return to the labyrinth, where Roxanne observes that the monsters on the second floor pose no challenge to Mythio, so she suggests that they go up to the upper floor. Mythio then asks if the floors of the labyrinth don't go down, so Roxanne clarifies that they go up, because the labyrinth is constantly growing. From what she has learned, it is said that labyrinths are living beings, which attract humans, and use monsters to kill and feed on them. What's more, there are other labyrinths scattered around the world, all because they reproduce. To defeat a labyrinth, you have to face the bosses on each floor until you reach the top. After hearing this, Mythio asks if there are any spells that can attack several enemies at the same time, and Roxanne says she's heard of it, but unfortunately she has no information information about it. Out of nowhere, depression starts to hit his mind, and Mythiel realizes that he must be out of MP. Sometime later, Roxane tells him that that's the 10th needle tree they've defeated, and asks him to check his magic crystal. Mythiel notices that his crystal is already red, while hers is still black, and this is because only the one who deals the final blow to the monster accumulates magic in the crystal. At that moment, Mythiel remembers one of his extra abilities, called Accelerated Crystallization. He imagines that this must increase the absorption rate of magic in the crystal, and he believes that this ability could be very useful, as it speeds up the process by 32 times. After defeating a few monsters, he shows Roxane that his crystal is already purple, and asks her to keep the secret about it. He also asks her how much such crystals usually sell for, and she replies that the green ones are worth around 10,000 of this world's coins, while the yellow ones go for 100,000 of this world's coins. Mythiel comes to the conclusion that he doesn't need money as a matter of urgency, and decides to deactivate the crystal's acceleration. He then explores his menu and finds the option to unlock group setting. By activating it, he can see Roxane's class and information, and he mentions that all that's missing now is a recovery skill. Roxane then explains that monks and priests can use healing magic, but they need to train by fighting monsters with their bare hands to develop this ability. Mythiel then decides to fight using his bare hands, and asks Roxane to do the same. They both attack the next enemy with their fist, but Mythiel finishes them off with the Durandal. On checking, he sees that none of them have the class, so he tries to use his other weapon to fight. He confirms that his attacks don't kill the monsters as easily with this weapon, noticing a huge difference compared to the Durandal. The monster still alive attacks Roxane, and Mythiel is surprised by her agility, as it looks like she's dancing. She lands the final blow on the needle tree, and when Mythiel checks the classes, he sees that Roxane has acquired the monk class because she defeated the enemy at the last second. So he adjusts his strength in the stats to leave the enemy low on life, and finishes one off with his punches, thus acquiring the monk class as well. With this, he obtains the healing ability, and uses it to heal a wound that the last monster inflicted on him. He tells Roxane that whenever one of them gets hurt, he can use this ability. He also tells her that he changed his class to monk, but she replies that her class is, and that she doesn't remember becoming a monk, or even acquiring the healing ability. It's only at this point that Mythiel understands that his menu is totally unique to him, so he entered this world using some kind of hack, which is why he asks Roxane to keep it a secret. Now, if they defeat the boss, the path to the second level will be completely open, and Roxane continues to play the teacher, telling him that only one group can enter the boss chamber at a time, and if 2 or more groups enter, the boss doesn't appear, and the door to the next level can't be opened. Therefore, when there is more than one group at a boss's door, each one must wait their turn in the waiting room, which is quite an interesting system. As they enter the boss room, Roxane mentions that if they're lucky, they might get some equipment from defeating him, because sometimes when a previous group is eliminated, their equipment remains in the boss room. After waiting a few seconds, the boss of the room is summoned, a giant level 1 tree. As he faces the creature, Mythiel realizes that he won't be able to eliminate it with a single attack, and is surprised to see how Roxane dodges all his blows. Mythiel takes advantage of an opening to continue attacking. He uses his Strike Blast ability to unleash several powerful attacks with a Durandal, finally defeating the giant tree after a second attempt. Roxane now picks up a leaf from the ground, and when Mythiel uses his assessment on her, he realizes that she has received the Beast Attack skill. She also gained the Herbalist class at that moment, and so she explains that herbalists use this leaf and other items to make medicine, and Mythiel asks what kind of ability Beast Attack is, and Roxane says that it's an ability unique to her class, which inflicts significant damage on monsters, but that she unfortunately can't use it, because to activate it, she needs to recite a spell, and this spell appears on the beastmen's heads on its own. Mythiel then thinks about it for a moment, because in his case, he always shortens his spells, and they all work. It's at this point that Roxane mentions that it's not recommended for beginners to use incantations, because if they make a mistake, they could end up dying. Now they finally pass the entrance to the second level, and Mythiel asks if they might end up facing that boss again, and Roxane says yes. He remembers that Roxane acquired the Herbalist class by taking just one leaf, so if he does the same, he can also get that class. He then decides to go back to the boss chamber again to defeat him, but he gets confused and returns to the entrance of the labyrinth. It's at this point that he realizes that he can't go back from level 2 to the boss chamber from level 1, and Roxane returns with him. Mythiel feels bad about his mistake and is afraid that Roxane will lose her respect for him for making such silly mistakes, so he just pretends that his experiment has failed and acts convincingly so that she believes his excuse, so they move on and face the boss again. But this time, Mithiel senses that he's about to use a spell. He proceeds to attack and interrupt his magic, and as soon as they defeat him, Roxane comments that the boss's magic circle has suddenly disappeared, and Mithiel tells her that it's because of the sword's statistic. He explains that the Durandal increases his attack by 5 times, and that it can absorb HP and MP, and can also interrupt spells, literally this sword that carries him on its back. Soon after, he takes the leaf and acquires the Herbalist class, and quickly uses that class's ability to create medicine, turning the leaf into an antidote for poison. This scares him, and he wonders if there are monsters that use poison, and Roxane replies that most of them do. And as soon as he finds out about this, the two of them go straight to a store to buy different medicine, so spending a total of 640 coins from this world, they get medicine for almost everything. And while Roxane counts the money, Mithiel reflects on never having managed to get a discount in this store, and this makes him a little sad, as the slaver and the owner of the accommodation gave him a 30% discount. At this point, Mithiel realizes that the merchants have a skill called calculation, which helps them do math quickly. He deduces that the bargaining skills act directly on this calculation, which perhaps explains why they can make complex calculations in an instant. With that, Mithiel understands why the discount didn't work as expected, since merchants have this advantage. After getting the medicine, he and Roxane return to the labyrinth, this time exploring the second level. Along the way, they encounter 2 enemies, and Mithiel uses his appraisal skill to identify one of them as a green Largata, and even though they are on the second level, Mithiel still manages to defeat them with ease, using just 1 blow from his Durandal. On the way, he comments that 2 enemies have appeared at the same time, because they are at level 2, so he assumes that at level 3, the enemies will come in groups of 3. However, Roxane corrects him, explaining that this pattern only starts from level 4. She also says that at level 8, the enemies come in groups of 4. Mithiel then deduces that at level 16, they will appear in groups of 5, and at level 32, in groups of 6, finally understanding better how the enemy system works. Later, they face 2 Largatas, and decide to split up to fight them, Mithiel quickly defeating his own, but Roxane warns him to be careful, because the Largata she's facing is starting to recite a spell. To his surprise, the spell is cast directly at Mithiel, trapping him in a web. Largata takes advantage and jumps on him, but Mithiel reacts in time, stopping her with his feet and finishing her off with the Durandal. Leaving the labyrinth, they head towards Vale Square, until suddenly Mithiel pushes Roxane against the wall, and in a low voice, he asks her to look at a man ahead, and pay attention to where he is looking. They realize that the man is watching the alien mansion, and to confirm his suspicion, Mithiel uses his ability and discovers that the man is a level 3 thief. He informs Roxane of this, and the two decide to visit the alien to warn him. However, Alien remains calm, commenting that many people hold a grudge against him because of his work, so it's not unusual for him to be watched. Roxane tells Alien that the man is a bandit, and Alien asks how they know this, and Mithiel then says that he has seen this person before, while he was collecting money to buy Roxane, and this excuse turns out to be quite convincing. Alien soon figures out who it might be, and reveals that the matter has to do with Mithiel. The problem is related to the young man Alien bought from Mithiel. This young man who had robbed a village was sold yesterday, the buyer being accompanied by 2 men who would return the next day with questions. The alien noticed that the bandana worn by the young man was not something an ordinary person would have, suggesting that he already had ties to the bandits. He then reveals that the young man is in a room at the back of the mansion, and he is not handcuffed at the request of his buyer, which means that if the young man wants to, he can easily open the door for the bandits. Even so, the alien isn't worried. He trusts his combat slaves, and the fact that his mansion is located in a central area of the city. Realizing this, Mithiel tells Roxane that they'd better leave, as they've already done their part by warning him, and now the rest is up to the alien himself. However, Roxane shows concern, as she was treated very well at the mansion, and she feels indebted to a kind old woman who helped her a lot. Faced with this, Mithiel offers to act as a bodyguard, and the excuse he gives for this is that he feels responsible for having caused the problems for the alien by selling him a slave who may have connections with the bandit. This explanation convinces the alien, and he offers 1,000 of this world's coins for the service, and even allows Mithiel to keep the intelligence cards of any bandits he defeats. With the deal sealed, the alien leads them to an exit at the back of the mansion, ensuring that the bandits outside don't see them as they leave. When they are alone, Roxane apologizes to Mithiel for acting on impulse, calling the man a thug without his permission. Mithiel tells her not to worry and asks her to just be more careful next time, otherwise he'll fill her back hole, and the fact that Mithiel is a very calm and caring man makes Roxane very happy. So they spend the night at the inn again, and the next morning, Roxane makes that face at Mithiel as usual, something you'll only see by watching the anime. Mithiel then prepares to leave and take up his role as bodyguard. Roxane also prepares to go along, and Mithiel only accepts on the condition that she stays behind. After organizing themselves, they head to the mansion, where the alien lets them in, and as soon as they climb the stairs, they are surprised by the presence of 4 huge men. The alien explains that they are his combat slave, and he asks Mithiel not to worry too much, because they are there to help him. So everyone stands there waiting to see if anything happens. And after a few minutes of waiting, Roxane senses that a door has been opened. The alien asks them to take care of this area. After a while, Mithiel hears a fight and realizes that someone is approaching. The person is a level 3 thief who was watching the mansion. He enters one of the rooms downstairs, and Mithiel asks Roxane to stand guard there, and cautiously goes into the room alone. As he observes the interior, he thinks that to become a wizard, he tried casting several extra spells, but none of them worked because he had no MP. However, there are still certain types of spells he hasn't tried yet, such as self-destruct and equivalent exchange. He dismisses the idea of using the first spell and deduces that the second spell he can use in exchange for giving away his HP, and if his enemy's HP is higher than his, it will probably be him who dies. Using this against a monster whose HP he doesn't know is very dangerous, which is why he's never tried it before. Now, while taking a peek, he finds the location of the bandits, even despite the darkness. Thanks to his assessment skill, Mithiel realizes that one of the bandits is also a level 3 thief, and that he has other classes, and he uses this as proof that he might have a lot more HP than this bandit. So he decides to use the equivalent exchange spell, aiming directly at the bandit, and just then an unpleasant sound echoes in the darkness, like an explosion. Mithiel feels a terrible pain as his HP drops dramatically. He becomes weak and falls to the ground. Roxane soon approaches to check on him, and the alien arrives soon after, having seen one of the bandits escaping in that direction. When he lights the lamp in the room, he notices a scene of blood and human remains, and is surprised. This worries Mithiel, as he fears that the alien suspects him, but the alien assumes that the bandit used a self-destruct sphere. He comments that he didn't expect bandits to have something like that, and Mithiel feels relieved that the alien himself has come up with an excuse for what he has just done. He looks down at the blood-streaked floor, and comes to the conclusion that if he'd had less HP, he might have ended up the same way. Then, after collecting the reward for his work, Mithiel uses the transfer skill to go to the labyrinth and replenish his health and MP thanks to Durandal. After recovering, he realizes that he has now obtained the sorcerer class and can use basic fire, water, wind, and earth spells. He takes the opportunity to ask Roxane what kind of spells wizards usually use, and she replies that she has at least heard that there are 3 types: the spells that attack everyone at once, spells that create barriers, and those that shoot spheres. Mithiel assumes that the spheres are offensive spells and begins to think of different ways of pronouncing them. When he thinks of fireball, he realizes that it generates a reaction, so he recites the fireball incantation and fires the spell, causing a massive explosion. Roxane is surprised and asks how he can already use magic, since his class is supposed to do the complete opposite, so he asks her again to keep it a secret. After that, he tests the firewall magic, and finally the firestorm magic. However, this last spell does nothing, despite consuming a lot of his MP, so he comes to the conclusion that he needs to be near monsters to use it, so they go up to level 2 to test it, and as soon as 2 enemies appear, he manages to use the spell, it being a much more powerful attack than the fireball. Mithiel soon realizes that spells are made up of an element and a form. In short, for individual attack, he uses the term ball. For defense magic, he uses wall, and for multiple targets, he uses storm, and just add that with an element. For example, fire for flame, water for liquids, breeze for wind, and finally sand for earth. He uses water wall magic, and Roxane comments that this water can be drunk, which he finds very useful. Mithiel is starting to think about relying more on magic and less on Durandal, because he wants to be able to protect Roxane better. To do this, they need to gain a lot of experience and level up as quickly as possible. While defeating enemies, he comments that he wishes his spells were more powerful. Roxane then explains explains that wizards often use staffs to improve their spells. Mithiel comments that he hasn't seen any staffs that are ideal for him, so Roxane tells him that if he goes to another city, he might find what he's looking for. And since there's a huge labyrinth there are lots of stores specializing in items for explorers. During the conversation, they end up in the waiting room of the level 2 boss, and they decide to go in to face him, and the boss is a giant Largata. When the boss attacks, Mithiel uses the wall of fire as a shield, and Roxane takes advantage of this to attack from one side, while he attacks from the other, defeating this boss without any problem. After collecting the loot, they advance to level 3, where Roxane senses the presence of an approaching creature. Mithiel stands guard, but realizes that he can defeat the enemy with a simple fireball. Fortunately, these enemies, called kobolds, are weaker than trees, and Roxane explains that these monsters are ideal for beginners. She also informs them that the item the enemy has dropped is practically unusable. However, when they defeat the next one, they realize that it drops a different type of item. This is because some enemies tend to leave different items when they are defeated, which is basic dungeon logic. However, Mithiel realizes that his inventory is already full, so he decides to retreat for the time being. Roxane also asks what his level is, and he replies that he's a level 20 explorer, which surprises her greatly. Mithiel recognizes that his level is a little high for his age, but that's obvious because there are only 2 options for him in this world. The first option is that he has been transported here, while the second option is that he is trapped inside a game. But everything here is too real to be a game. A while later, he exchanges the loot for gold, and while doing so, he hears a woman announcing a direct trip to the capital. Roxane then explains that it's a land crossing. She also explains that there is an option to pay to get instantly to places that would take days to walk to, and although it's very useful, he's not interested, as his goal isn't to go very far. Roxane then clarifies that the city he wants to go to, called Curator, is close to the capital, as she has already had to go there once, and this ends up getting Mithiel interested in giving it a try. Roxane wishes him a good trip, intending to wait for him as the ticket is very expensive. Mithiel understands her reasoning and decides to go to the capital on his own, as he can travel for free using the transfer once he gets there. When he gets there, he finds himself in the capital's Adventurers Guild, and the first thing he does is ask the receptionist to take him to Curator, which is quickly done using the transfer. He then returns to Roxane using this magic again, but he realizes that it takes its toll, consuming much more HP than he expected. He asks her to go back to the inn and informs her that they can now go to Curator whenever they want. Back at the inn, the two of them take a bath and, as usual, end up having a good time. This has now become their routine. The next day, they head to Curator, where Roxane guides Mithiel to the city's labyrinth, located right in the center of the city. When they reach the entrance, he asks what the adventurers are doing there, and she explains that they are paying the entrance fee, as they are charged every time they wish to enter. Then Roxane whispers in Mithiel's ear that they can enter the labyrinth using the transfer, so they can avoid paying this kind of tax. He loves this idea, and compliments Roxane, saying that as well as being beautiful and strong, she is very bright. Shortly afterwards, they go to a store, where the store owner asks if they are looking for a house or something specific. Mithiel says he's looking for a weapon for his arsenal, and the woman gives him instruction. He talks to Roxane about staying in this town, noting that the rental prices range from 10,000 coins of this world to 30,000 coins, which he considers a good option. When they arrive at the armory, Mithiel chooses the best wand, obviously using his rating to check the item. Then they explore the neighborhoods outside the city and really start to think about living there. Interested, they return to that store, and the shopkeeper explains that he is responsible for District 6. The city here is basically divided into 6 districts, which run counterclockwise from the center, from 1 to 6, this being District 6. She asks if they are interested in a house for 2 people, and Mithiel replies that for the time being yes, but that in the future he will have a harem. But even though he doesn't finish his sentence, the shopkeeper smiles, understanding what he plans to do in the future. She examines Roxane and says that she is a good woman. She then suggests that if he isn't an adventurer, he might be interested in a house with protective cement. Roxane then explains that houses made with this cement don't allow transfer magic to be used, which is why adventurers refuse this type of housing. Later, they visit a house and realize that it is very spacious, although the garden is completely abandoned. abandoned. Roxane comments that this is a rosemary plantation, which unfortunately is in a terrible state, so, seizing the opportunity at a great price, they negotiate with the agency and promise to supply it with seeds as soon as they bring the garden back to life. Inside the house, Roxane distracts the agent by chatting about the kitchen, and Mithiel takes the opportunity to go up to the second floor, as he wants to test whether his transfer works in a house with protective cement. Fortunately, his magic continues to work, so he concludes that the extra spells are even better than he expected, as the transfer has no limits, and allows him to go anywhere he has visited before. But he also sees that this has its disadvantages. If he appears in a place where he shouldn't be, people may end up getting suspicious. So before using the transfer, he needs to make sure that there is no one around, or that it is safe to use this magic in that place. After checking that everything is alright, the agent informs him that the annual price of the house is around 45,000 coins of this world, and Mithiel obviously accepts the offer. Later, they finalize the contract and then buy other things to furnish the house. After completing their activities, Roxane comments to Mithiel that the discount they got was great, and Mithiel replies that it was all thanks to her, although he thinks it was actually due to her bargaining skills, but he decides to let her have the credit. After all, there's nothing better than making a woman happy. They discuss buying furniture for the new house. Eumidio uses the transfer ability to take them directly inside the house. This surprises Roxane, as the house is built with protective cement, and Eumidio again asks her to keep it a secret. In the afternoon, they return to Vale to explore the labyrinth. Eumidio is very eager to test his new wand against his enemies. He confirms that he now only needs 2 fireballs to defeat a Largata, whereas before he needed 3 fireballs. After this experiment, they return to their usual inn for their last night there, as the next day they will move to their new home. They consider this night to be special, since it was in this room that they had their first time, and spent all that time together. They decide to celebrate by doing those things one more time, things you won't see here on my channel. The next day, they head to the new house, where Roxane acts like a good woman by cleaning the inside using the water provided by Eumidio, who even conjures up a wall of water to ensure a continuous supply. Meanwhile, Eumidio goes to the labyrinth. Inside, he uses the transfer to return to the house with Roxane, then informs her that from now on, they can access the labyrinth without paying any fee. Later, when the furniture arrives, including a dining table and a very large bed for the 2 of them to stay in together, they put everything in its proper place, and obviously after installing the bed they waste no time, and try it out quickly to see if it can withstand their spiritual pressure. The next day, they both go to the labyrinth without paying the fees, and Eumidio notices that there are a lot of people there. Roxane explains that this is common on the first level, and since you have to pay the entrance fee, many people stay there as long as possible. What's more, because this is an old and famous maze, no one knows for sure how many levels it has or who the final boss is, as he has never been completely defeated. Roxane remembers that the last known level is 91, reached only by the Emperor's large group, so, after some waiting, it's finally their turn to face the boss of the first level. Eumidio initially thinks that the creature must be strong, but when he sees its first attack, he is surprised at how slow the boss is. This causes him to lose motivation, and he defeats the boss with a single blow. He says that this boss was boring, and Roxane reminds him that this is only level 1. When they reach the second level, Roxane informs him that there are only kobolds there, which makes Eumidio decide not to continue. They return home using the transfer, then go to eat, and then look for seeds with us. Not only that, but they also buy tools to take care of the garden. Soon after, they spend the afternoon preparing the soil, planting seeds and building fences, thus starting a beautiful garden. Just then, Roxane asks for a bathtub to wash her clothes in, and Eumidio goes to the store to buy one. Eumidio discovers that the bathtubs are made to order, so he asks for a very large one, and his plan is to take a bath with Roxane. Later, Eumidio and Roxane are on the 3rd level of the labyrinth. Now in the boss chamber, after defeating a kobold again, Eumidio realizes that he has dropped an item called kobold flour. Roxane explains that it is similar to wheat flour, but tastier than what is sold in town. At home, Roxane asks what Eumidio is preparing when she sees him cooking, and he tells her that he's making a monkey soup stew, and realizing that she doesn't know about this kind of delicious food, he promises to surprise her with something incredible. When she tastes it, Roxane is delighted, saying that she can feel the hair of a monkey. Meanwhile, Eumidio, who is a pure and holy man, is thinking only about what he is going to do with her that night, and his pure and educational thoughts make him more and more excited about what he intends to do during the night. So several days go by, and they progress through the labyrinth. Their garden is getting better and better, and Yumidio has been teaching Roxane how to make dishes using monkey meat. Now, during the battle against a floor boss, Yumidio is wounded out of nowhere, and he doesn't understand how it happened, and when he notices that Roxane is also wounded, he acts like a madman, unleashing several continuous attacks while healing her with spells. So Yumidio finally defeats the boss, and once he's safe, he wonders how he got hurt. Then Roxane explains that he was inactive for a long time, and this quickly makes him understand what happened. It turns out that the Weeping Sheep's ability is to use a roar that causes fainting or sleep, and because he was on his guard, he ended up getting caught up in it. He then suggests that they both return, as it's almost time for something very important to arrive. Roxane doesn't understand what he means at first, but when they get home, she sees the large bathtub that Yumidio had ordered. Yumidio tells her that this bathtub is a place where they can bathe together. He puts pots inside and fills them with water to heat them up. He then starts to use his water control magic, but his head starts to hurt and he feels like killing himself. However, there's still a long way to go before the bathtub is full, and unfortunately that's the only method available, since in this world there's no other way to get water into the house without using a spell. Yumidio admits that he's feeling a bit perverted for trying too hard just to have a bath with Roxane, but that doesn't matter now. What matters is fulfilling his greatest wish. After a while, he finally manages to fill the tub with hot water and quickly presents the soap to Roxane. She asks how he managed to do it, and Yumidio says he doesn't know, because it was the story's scriptwriter who taught him. And best of all, thanks to the scriptwriter, he has unlocked the alchemist class. He rubs his hands with the soap and creates the foam, and seeing that the soap is working perfectly, they both end up taking a much better bath than before. After the relaxing bath, the two enjoy this beautiful moment together. After seeing this scene, I almost bought a hot tub. Later in bed, Yumidio comes to the conclusion that although he can use healing magic and so can Roxane, they shouldn't overload themselves doing it. Soon, he concludes that the only solution is to increase the number of members in his team, literally an excuse for him to add another grotto to his group. The next day, they go to the 7th level of the labyrinth where they face some rabbits. In the middle of the fight, we are taken to a flashback of a conversation they had in the capital, where Roxane explains that rabbit skins are not very useful. However, if they take them to a specific tailor shop, they can get a good deal in exchange for the rabbit skin, because apparently coats made from rabbit skin are excellent for the cold and very popular with noble ladies. Tailors for noblemen usually buy lots of 100 pieces, which brings in a lot of money. Back in the present, they focus on hunting rabbits in the labyrinth to obtain this material. They reach the boss room, where the leader is a similar rabbit, but red in color. Yumidio finds the boss adorable, but on hearing his roar, he changes his mind and defeats him without too much difficulty. This boss drops rabbit meat, and Roxane surprises Yumidio by using it in the kitchen to prepare delicious rabbit skewer. Now we see them returning to the waiting room to face the same boss they've just defeated, but they have to wait because there's another group inside. A young man in front of them asks if they are together, and Yumidio replies yes, and realizing that the boy is alone, Yumidio comments that it must be difficult for him. The boy explains that he is raising money to get more members, but always ends up spending his money. Yumidio quickly understands that he wants to buy slaves, just as he did before. The adventurer also mentions that it's been 2 years since he entered 7th level, and that his level as an explorer has increased, so he's decided to move up another floor. Now when he defeats the boss, he can finally add his first member, and he says that luck is finally smiling on him, and then enters the boss's chamber. After a few minutes of waiting, the door opens, and when Yumidio and Roxane enter, they realize that the boss was already waiting for them. This seems strange, as it has never happened before. Yumidio then acts confidently, defeating the boss using his best skills. However, nothing happens, and he doesn't understand why the boss was already there. Out of nowhere, he notices a glow in the darkness, and as he gets closer, he finds some equipment on the ground. Roxane explains that these are the equipment of the group that entered before them, and since the boss was already there when they entered, it means that the boss defeated that group. Understanding this, Yumidio thinks about the young man he talked to earlier. He realizes that the boy has been defeated, and that makes him very sad. Then, after a long sigh, he smiles at Roxane and suggests that they go home. Once there, Roxane Roxane comments that he's being ruder than usual when they're together. Meanwhile, Yumideo can't get the image of the young adventurer who died in the labyrinth out of his head. Obviously, another excuse from the script so that he can add another beautiful girl to his group. Yumideo continues to reflect on what happened. He knew that the labyrinth was a dangerous place where people lost their lives, but until then he had only seen it as a distant fact. The adventurer who entered before them faced the boss and disappeared, and he knows that the same could happen to him and Roxane in the future. Yumideo wonders why he's trying to cross this dangerous bridge, and Roxane wakes up at that moment and realizes that he can't sleep. Yumideo says he'll sleep later so as not to worry her, but she hugs him, saying she'll do whatever it takes to help him. This is enough for her to accept his affection, which helps him relieve all the tension and finally fall asleep. The next morning, he wakes up to kisses from Roxane. She asks him if he's calmed down, to which he simply replies with a smile. While exploring the labyrinth again, Yumideo realizes that the adventurer they met the day before has died, and that he himself could face the same fate at any moment. So, determined to overcome this weakness, he decides to become stronger so that even if he makes a mistake, he has the strength to save himself. So, after defeating countless monsters and collecting materials, Yumideo realizes that he already has 300 rabbit skins, and decides to go to the capital. In the capital, they visit a tailor's shop and tell the man in charge that they want to sell the 300 rabbit skins. While the skins are being cut up, Yumideo notices a sweater that would be ideal for Roxane, and following the clerk's recommendation, he ends up buying two, which distracts Yumideo because while he is fantasizing about Roxane wearing the sweater, he suffers a strong blow in the labyrinth. After an exhausting day, they both finally rest by taking a nice bath in the tub, where they decide to exercise as usual. Afterwards, Yumideo enjoys seeing Roxane wearing the beautiful sweater when they are in bed, and so they share another special moment together. After that, we see Yumideo revealing to Roxane that he possesses a skill crystal, which if fused with an empty space on his sword, he can create a piece of equipment with a new skill. However, only dwarves can act as blacksmith, but he has a way of solving this. However, he shows the crystal to Roxane, who is surprised to see that it is yellow. Yumideo then explains that he recently fused it with another crystal, and he again asks Roxane to keep it a secret. He remembers that yellow crystals cost around 100,000 coins in this world, which means he'll be able to get the money he needs to make a certain purchase. Then Yumideo informs Roxane that he plans to go out for a while and meet an alien. He tells her that he has understood that when entering a labyrinth, he must be prepared for the possibility of dying, and normally, if the master died, the slave must take his own life. So initially his going to talk to the alien is to change that. He wants Roxane freed in case something happens to him, and Roxane thanks him deeply for his words, but she says that if he really trusts her, he shouldn't write that in his will. She promises to protect him, saying that she is a warrior, and that she couldn't bear the shame of staying alive if her master died. So, at her insistence, Yumideo agrees not to write the will. Roxane takes the opportunity to say that she believes Yumideo will achieve great things, and that he is also very kind to her, so she wants to repay his generosity. After listening to her, Yumideo makes it clear that he's not looking for great achievements. He's there because he just wants a quiet life. However, he still plans to go to the alien, as he still has other matters to resolve. It turns out that during the recent battle, Yumideo realized that he needs to increase the number of members in his group. He needs another warrior for the front line, and someone who can heal him. He doesn't want a man at all, because a woman is a double advantage, helping him in battle and helping him relax at night. He avoids impure thoughts, and goes to the alien's mansion, where he expresses his interest in expanding his group, and initially he asks the alien about the possibility of acquiring blacksmith slave. The alien explains that although it's not impossible, it's quite difficult to find one, because many fail when smelting skill crystals, which are expensive, and these frequent failures can deteriorate the relationship between master and slave. What's more, dwarves are aware of this, and generally avoid becoming slaves if they are blacksmith. On hearing this, Yumideo asks if this applies to dwarves who aren't blacksmiths, and the alien replies that he currently has a dwarf available, but unfortunately, his personality isn't suited to combat. He suggests providing a letter of recommendation for another store, and Yumideo consults Roxane, who recommends he meet the dwarf first to assess whether or not they like her. After a while, the alien and an older lady open the door. Roxane is happy to see the woman who took care of her and treated her well in the past, and then they introduce the dwarf, whose name is Sherry. She's 16, the same age as Roxane, and Yumideo has noticed that their ears resemble those of an elf, and he notices that her body isn't as muscular as that of a dwarf. Sherry is a little nervous kiss as she greets them, and informs them that she is a level 10 adventurer. But Yumidio already knew all this after a short assessment. She clarifies that she has no problem exploring Labyrinth, but says she hasn't managed to become a blacksmith, which confuses Yumidio. They sit down to talk more comfortably, and Yumidio asks what she meant by her previous statement. Sherry explains that usually, when a dwarf reaches level 10 as an adventurer, he can become a blacksmith, but that wasn't the case with you. Yumidio asks how it's determined whether or not someone can become a blacksmith, and she replies that it's generally believed that those with a talent for exploring labyrinths can become blacksmiths, but that wasn't the case with her. Yumidio then asks if it's true that she can't become a blacksmith because she lacks talent, because he knows that in this world, some people acquire classes and others don't, unlike him who can possess any class. So, because he has already managed to make Roxanne acquire a new class, and because he has also become a blacksmith, he finds it very difficult to believe that a class is something innate, especially with the power of the haki that he has. So, after asking a few more questions, Yumidio assumes that there must be some other requirement for being a blacksmith besides leveling up. So if Sherry needs it, she can become one, and he promises to help. He says she's exactly the kind of girl he wants to join his group. They then ask Sherry to leave the room, and Roxanne asks permission to go and see the old woman, leaving Yumidio and Alan alone. Yumidio takes the opportunity to say that Sherry is not a blacksmith, but is a 16-year-old dwarf, and fortunately she is willing to become a slave who has intimate relations with him. What's more, as she's a virgin, she doesn't have any diseases, so her price is 30,000 coins of this world. But since she hasn't been here long and doesn't have much education, Alan will give her a great discount, letting her go for 270 coins of this world. Yumidio shows no mercy in penny pinching in every possible way, so thanks to his 30% discount skill, he manages to bring the price down to 198,000 coins of this world. Soon after, we see Alan walking past Roxanne with the money in the tray. When she returns to Yumidio, he informs her that he has decided to buy the dwarf. She responds happily. For a second, Yumidio thought she was going to be depressed, but apparently she took it very well. They then formalize a contract where they both look at their intelligence cards, confirming that Sherry is now there. Once outside, he adds to the group and takes the opportunity to check Sherry's classes, confirming that she doesn't actually have the blacksmith class. He says that they have both returned home, and Sherry is a little confused as there are no adventurers in the group. Yumidio realizes her concern, but he intends to surprise Sherry, so he activates his transfer, and so she is pulled through the portal and taken straight home, where they all sit down at the table. Sherry then asks Yumidio if he can use several classes, and he replies that it's almost like that, but he doesn't have the adventurer class, and what they've just experienced is transference, a transportation magic. He then changes the subject, asking her what kind of weapon she likes to use in Labyrinth. She replies that she specializes in spears, but if she's going to be on the front line with Roxanne, a noodle would be better. This reminds Yumidio that he had to fight empty-handed to become a monk, and when he thinks about it, hammers are associated with blacksmith. He confirms with Sherry that she has never used a noodle, and tells her that from now on, they should try to help Sherry acquire the blacksmith class. Roxanne agrees, and even says that the two of them can stay on the front line, while Yumidio attacks from behind with his spells. Upon hearing this, Sherry is surprised to learn that he can also use spells, and he simply asks her to keep it a secret. Afterwards, during a conversation with Sherry, Yumidio keeps asking silly questions, asking Sherry if pasta is a common weapon for dwarves, something she has already answered, but he insists on playing dumb. She answers yes, since dwarves aren't tall, but they are very strong, so they can use heavy weapons. They then enter an armory, and Sherry shows them how she handles a giant mass, impressing Yumidio, who realizes that she really is very strong. There, he informs her that he will buy that weapon, and that it will be hers. Once back at home, they talk about the armor being worn, and Yumidio comments that she shouldn't need armor for her torso. However, Sherry takes it the wrong way when she sees her flat chest, while Roxanne takes the opportunity to reassure her by showing off her great attributes. Shortly afterwards, Yumidio asks Sherry if she knows anything about skill slots, and she says that in the past, there were people who talked about this theory and said that equipment had these slots, and if the slots weren't empty, they couldn't be fused with crystal. The dwarves call these theories because they are not proven, because even if it were real, no one has the ability to figure it out. However, Yumidio says in his head that he can, because he is the hacker user of this world. Sherry confesses that she is very interested in this subject. Yumidio also asks her if she knows of a class called Hero, to which she replies that it's a legendary class, and it's said that the first emperor had it, but no one has ever seen it, so she doesn't think it exists. That's just what Yumidio expected, since he has a rare class. Later, they go to the labyrinth, where Yumidio takes the opportunity to show off his skills to Sherry. Leaving her impressed, Roxane takes the opportunity to instruct her, and Roxane says that it's very easy to fight alongside Yumideo. She explains everything in her own way, and Sherry doesn't understand a thing, and quickly turns to look at Yumideo, hoping he'll be able to explain better what she should do. However, Yumideo only recovers his MP and uses the transfer skill to return home. There, he notices that Sherry seems a little unwell, so she tells him that there is something that has been puzzling her for a long time. She asks what this transfer ability is that can also be used to travel outside the labyrinth. What's more, he doesn't even recite the incantation to activate it, and yet he defeats his enemies with just one blow, which Sherry finds incredible. She asks Yumideo what level he is, and he replies that he is level 33, surprising Roxane, who asks him if he wasn't level 20 a few days ago. Yumideo says that he really was level 20 the other day, and they are both very surprised to see how incredible he is. Obviously a great hack user. Meanwhile, Yumideo reflects that this is because he accumulates XP 100 times faster. Damn anime scriptwriter sent by Satan 100 times. It could be 5 times, but 100 times is a lot. And again, he asks Sherry to keep it a secret. The name of this anime should be I Was Sent to Another World. I bought 2 slaves and made them keep my powers a secret. Later, it's finally time for the meal, and Yumideo serves Sherry first since she was the one who cooked it. At that moment, he senses a murderous ally coming from Roxane, so at the last second he decides to serve her first, and seeing that she's happy, he breathes a sigh of relief. Then Yumideo mentions that wolves have the bestial warrior class, and dwarves the blacksmith class. He asks if there is an exclusive class for humans, and they both get a little nervous when they hear this question. Roxane simply replies that as long as he gives her his blessing, she doesn't care, and Sherry explains that humans are a species that are only good for doing suspicious things, so the exclusive class for their species is the carnal maniac. And speaking of suspicious thing, when night comes, Yumideo prepares the bath and enters the true paradise while watching Roxane and Sherry enter the room. He notices that Sherry's hair is very long, and Roxane takes the opportunity to instruct Sherry on what to do in this situation. And when everyone has finished, it's finally time for bed, and they both prepare for what's to come. Yumideo asks Sherry to come closer so that he can start everything that is about to happen. But then he realizes something. He has forgotten the order, as he must always do everything with Roxane first. And faced with this emergency, Yumideo tells them both that Roxane must come first and Sherry last. And after saying those words, he manages to calm Roxane's murderous gaze. She suddenly becomes very happy, and Yumideo is saved from dying. Once the misunderstanding is resolved, the three of them end up having a lot of fun during the night. The next day, Yumideo is surprised by Sherry's long hair. He takes the opportunity to check his classes, and confirms that he has obtained the carnal maniac class, something he had expected after last night. So he simply appreciates the increase in spirit, intelligence, and MP that this class grants him. He sees that his ability is Burning Vigor, but wonders what the abstinence attack ability means. Then he remembers Sherry's words the day before, about humans awakening suspicious abilities to do suspicious things. Then Yumideo declares that in order to further increase these abilities and become a log that never falls with infinite vigor, he will level up to buy more slaves and create his insane harem of 73 girls. Finally, as time goes by, we see Yumideo buying more and more female slaves. He obviously becomes intimate with each of them, and the girls in turn now fight over who gets to be with him first. And that's the end of the anime. That was today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for more summaries like this. A big kiss to everyone, bye and see you in the next video.